Wow, this is the first time I had to lower a microphone. This is a new experience. Commissioner Thompson is someone who I certainly, like everyone else in the legislature, have admired and had a great time and to serve with him while I was serving in the legislature, but I also looked up to him both figuratively and literally. He stands head and shoulders above everyone, not just because of his height and stature, but really because of his character. And you got to see, I think, a glimpse of that. He is the real deal, and we are so honored to have him serving in the position that he is. Let's give him another round of applause, if we would. I'm here to do what I only know Baptist preachers to do real well, and that's to ask you to give money. Eddie asked me to do the rallying call for making sure that we're supporting the Booker T Inspirational Network. But before I make the hard ask, I'm going to tell you a little story. There was once this lady, and she was married to this wealthy guy. He was a really wealthy guy. I mean, he was like David Brumbaugh wealthy. I mean, really, really, really wealthy gentleman. And this guy, unlike David Brumbaugh, though, who was a wonderful family man, this guy was just a jerk, and he was mean to his wife. He was stingy with his money. And he would never spend a dime on his wife. He wouldn't even buy her a new dress, Commissioner. And this was known throughout the community that this guy was a stingy guy. Well, eventually he got sick. He got ill, and his wife had to care for him. His wife had to nurse him. She had to see about him, and he eventually passed away. But before he passed away, he made it known that his one wish was to be buried with all of his money. He wanted to take it with him. And sure enough, at the funeral, it was a closed casket because he had deteriorated so much. But it was a closed casket service, but it was an oversized casket. And so, of course, as you can imagine, there were whispers in the church wondering, is it in there? Is the money actually there? And eventually, the sisters at the church, about a week after the funeral, they finally got up enough nerve to go ask her, did you do it? Did you fulfill your husband's dying wish? Did you actually keep the promise? And that wife, who was loyal and devoted, she said, I did keep the promise. And if he can cash that check I put in there, it's all his. But sincerely, tonight we are here for no other reason, to invest in what I think is the greatest investment that we could ever make, and that's an investment in young people. You know, Booker T. Washington, I don't know if you know much about his life, but after the turn of the 19th century, and a major part of the 20th century, he and a guy named W.B. Du Bois, they were in a philosophical debate about what should happen with African Americans, people who had been enslaved for a period of time. There was high unemployment, there was a high level of discontentment, and what do? How do you get this part of our culture mobilized and engaged? And there were two ideas, there were two philosophies. And W. Du Bois, who was from the North and was a very highly educated thinker, he thought that there should be a group of what he called the 10th, a group of African Americans who should get educated and should, almost an elitism, if you will, and should raise everybody else up. That was kind of the idea. But Booker T. Washington had a very different philosophy. Of course, he was from the South, was involved heavily in agriculture. He believed that the only way that a man could ever be risen out of poverty, particularly generational poverty, was through hard work and through land ownership. He thought that those were the key pillars. And so they had this philosophical debate that raged throughout most of their lives. In fact, some have argued that it was actually a personal vendetta against each other. But I think one of the things as we think about Booker T. Washington, what we know is that in order to be a thriving member of society, much like the commissioner mentioned, someone has to invest in you. I don't care where you come from, what walk of life in. Someone else has to reach back and invest in you. And that's what we're here to do tonight, is to make sure that we're investing. And what we know is that when we invest in young people, we receive a return on that investment twofold.